Magic, jealousy, and spiritual harm are realities acknowledged in our faith. While they may be unseen, their effects can deeply impact a person's physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. However, we must always remember that nothing happens without the permission of the Almighty. Our ultimate protection comes from Him, the one who controls every aspect of creation. The best defense against magic is a strong and consistent connection with our Creator. Reciting and understanding the Quran, especially verses like Ayatul Kursi and the last 3 chapters, Surah Ikhlas, Surah Falak, and Surah Nas, acts as a shield. These powerful verses protect us from envy, evil whispers, and harmful intentions of others. Seeking protection also requires daily discipline, maintaining prayer, making supplications regularly, and avoiding sinful activities that weaken our spiritual defenses. Trust in the Almighty should be stronger than any fear of magic. If a person feels affected, they should turn to spiritual healing through legitimate means. Quranic recitation, remembrance of God, and sincere prayers, avoiding any form of superstition or prohibited practices. True cure does not come from charms or people claiming special powers. It comes directly from the Almighty's mercy. When we put our trust in Him alone, we gain strength, peace, and protection from every type of harm, seen or unseen. Strong connection with God is the most powerful shield a believer can possess against any form of magic or spiritual harm. Protection begins with understanding that nothing in this world happens except by the will of the Almighty. Magic, evil eye, jealousy, and spiritual attacks may exist, but their influence is only as strong as the weakness of our faith. When a person's heart is filled with trust in God, no force of darkness can overpower them. Faith is not simply a belief in the mind. It is a condition of the heart that must be nurtured and strengthened every single day. Prayer is the first and most essential form of protection. The 5 daily prayers act like walls around the believer. Each prayer cleanses the heart and brings the soul closer to the Creator. Ignoring prayer is like leaving the front door open for harm to enter. When a believer bows in humility and submits to God, they declare that no harm can reach them except by His permission. Through prayer, the believer gains spiritual light that repels the darkness of magic and envy. Along with prayer, constant remembrance of God purifies the soul. Simple, sincere remembrance strengthens the heart and places an invisible barrier around a person. When the tongue remains busy in praising God, seeking His forgiveness, and calling upon Him, the heart remains guarded. Reciting the Quran is another major element of protection. The Quran is not just a book of guidance, but a source of healing and mercy. Certain verses, such as Ayatul Kursi and the last 3 surahs, Ikhlas, Falak, and Nas, have been specifically taught to us as protection against evil forces. These verses do not hold power on their own. Their power lies in the words of God that they carry. When recited with understanding and belief, they act like a spiritual armor. The angels protect the one who recites Ayatul Kursi before sleeping, and the one who regularly recites Surah Falak and Nas puts a shield around themselves against the jealousy and plots of others. Strengthening faith also involves removing actions that weaken the heart. Committing sins knowingly or carelessly opens the door for negative influences to affect a person's life. Sins create spiritual cracks that magic and evil eye can exploit. By repenting regularly, seeking forgiveness, and striving to correct our behavior, we patch those cracks and reinforce our spiritual defenses. It is important to reflect on our own behavior before blaming external factors. Sometimes what we think is magic could be the result of distance from God, lack of prayer, or stress rooted in worldly concerns. Strengthening faith gives clarity, allowing a person to distinguish between spiritual problems and personal struggles. Trust in God, known as tawakkul, is another key part of protection. When a believer fully relies on their creator, fear loses its grip. Panic, anxiety, and worry give strength to the enemy, while calm reliance on God weakens their efforts. Believers must remember that those who try to harm others with magic can never overpower the decree of the Almighty. Their actions may cause temporary discomfort, but they cannot change destiny. Knowing that God is the protector gives peace to the heart and courage to the soul. Another important aspect of maintaining a strong connection with God is surrounding oneself with a good environment, keeping good company, being around those who remember God, attending worship gatherings, and listening to beneficial knowledge all increase spiritual strength. On the other hand, negative influences, bad company, and harmful entertainment weaken a person's heart and distance them from their faith. Finally, a believer must make dua regularly, because prayer is the weapon of the weak and the strong alike. When a person lifts their hands in sincere supplication, they are acknowledging their dependence on God alone. No matter how powerful the enemy thinks, he is the one who seeks protection from the creator of the heavens and the earth will always be stronger. In summary, protection against magic begins not with searching for cures outside, but with walking on the inside. When the heart is alive with faith, the mind is at peace, and the soul is connected to God. Nothing can harm the believer except what the Almighty has written as a test. Strengthening faith is not a one-time action. It is a continuous journey of worship, remembrance, trust, and repentance. The more a person invests in their relationship with God, the stronger their shield becomes against every unseen harm. The ultimate power belongs only to him, and when he protects, no one can harm. Reciting verses from the Quran for protection and cure is a powerful and authentic method taught through revelation. The Quran is not merely a book of rules and teachings. It is a source of healing, comfort, guidance, and mercy. When a person turns to the Quran, seeking protection from magic or any evil force, they are turning to the ultimate words of the Creator, words filled with light that erase darkness. It is essential to remember that these verses are not simply sounds spoken by the tongue. They are divine speech that carries unmatched spiritual strength and protection when recited with belief, understanding, and sincerity. Among the most well-known verses for protection is Ayatul Kursi, which is found in Surah Al-Baqarah. This verse speaks about the greatness, power, and authority of the Almighty. It reminds us that God never tires, and nothing can happen without his knowledge and permission. Reciting Ayatul Kursi after every prayer strengthens the shield around a believer. Reciting it before sleep brings protection from harmful forces. Throughout the night, when a believer recites these powerful words with conviction, they are declaring that no power on earth or beyond can harm them without the permission of the Almighty. The last three surahs of the Quran, Ikhlas, Falak, and Nas, are also known as surahs of protection. Surah Ikhlas strengthens a believer's understanding of pure monotheism, recognizing that God is one and unlike any of his creation. Surah Falak seeks refuge from all forms of creation that may cause harm, including those who practice magic and spread jealousy. Surah Nas protects against the whispers of Satan and the hidden dangers that affect the mind and soul. Reciting these surahs in the morning and evening, as well as before sleep, acts like placing a spiritual armor around oneself. The practice of reciting these verses is simple but extremely powerful. It shows that spiritual strength does not require complicated rituals or expensive procedures. Just a sincere heart and a commitment to regularly connect with the Quran. When recited daily, these verses add layers of protection that cannot be easily broken. Many people overlook these divine remedies while searching for other solutions, not realizing that the greatest healing has already been placed in their hands. Another important point is that the Quran does not only protect a person, but it also heals them. If they are already affected by magic or spiritual harm, Reciting verses of the Quran over oneself or over water to drink can serve as a cure. This method is known as ruqya, spiritual healing through Quranic recitation. The key is that ruqya must always be done using the words of God, not through strange symbols, chants, or forbidden practices. A person can do ruqya on themselves by placing their hands over their body and reciting verses with full trust in the Almighty's ability to heal. Those who feel affected by magic often become anxious, fearful, and hopeless. The Quran helps restore peace to the heart and confidence to the soul. It removes the effects of negativity and replaces them with calmness and light. The healing from the Quran does not only target the harm caused to the body, but also the emotional pain and confusion that often come with spiritual attacks. Many times, magic can create fear and distance a person from their faith. By reciting the Quran, they regain spiritual clarity and become stronger against the forces that want to weaken them. Reciting Quran is not restricted to moments of fear or trouble. When incorporated into daily life, the believer remains constantly under God's protection. One should recite early in the morning before starting the day, and in the evening before the night settles. A home in which the Quran is recited becomes a home filled with blessings and guarded by angels. Harm, jealousy, and evil influences struggle to enter a place filled with God's words. It is also important to have patience and consistency. The effects of ruqya are not always immediate. Just like medicine requires time to work, spiritual healing also requires commitment. If a person recites only once and stops, their protection becomes weak again. But if they continue every day, their shield becomes stronger than anything that can attempt to pierce it. The healing process is smoother when the person avoids sins, maintains their prayers, and keeps their trust fully in God. In conclusion, the Quran is the believer's strongest source of protection and cure. It is a gift from the Creator that guides, heals, guards, and strengthens the heart. Wherever a believer may be, the Quran is always within reach, ready to provide relief and security. Those who hold tightly to it cannot be overcome by any force of magic or evil. The speech of God is above all other powers, and when we use it as our defense, we walk through life protected by the one who created and controls everything. Avoiding superstition and trusting only in God is one of the most important principles in seeking protection and cure from magic. Many people become desperate when they feel spiritually harmed. This desperation sometimes leads them to methods that are not allowed in Islam. Visiting fortune tellers, wearing objects with unknown symbols, seeking help from those who claim special powers, or participating in rituals that have no basis in religion. Instead of solving the problem, these actions make it worse. They distance a person from the Almighty and bring them closer to the very evil they want to escape. True protection and healing come only from lawful methods that rely on faith, not fear or superstition. When a person believes that someone else has control over their fate, they weaken their trust in God. There is a dangerous trap in thinking that a human, a charm, or a secret object can offer safety. This gives power to something that has no real power. People may feel temporary comfort because of the belief they attach to these items, but internally, their faith becomes weaker, and spiritually, they become more vulnerable. Islam teaches that the moment we depend on anything other than God for protection, we expose our hearts to spiritual harm. The true believer must always remember that only the Creator can bring benefit or prevent harm. Superstition often arises from fear and ignorance. When people do not understand what is happening in their lives, they may blame everything on magic. They might say someone cast a spell, someone gave them the evil eye, or someone is trying to destroy their life. Sometimes the real issue might be stress, lack of patience, personal mistakes, or even health problems that need medical attention. jumping to conclusions and assuming that every difficulty is magic causes more anxiety and leads a person to seek wrong solutions. The balance between spiritual healing and practical problem solving must always be maintained. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that someone who practices forbidden acts can help them. Some pretend to be spiritual healers, but they engage in acts that involve jinn, symbols, and rituals that have no root in the Quran or Sunnah. They may ask for the person's name and their mother's name, give them talismans to bury or hang, write strange drawings, or instruct them to do things that clearly go against faith. These practices open the door for evil jinn to interfere with a person's life, making the situation more complicated and dangerous. The person may feel slight relief at first, but soon the symptoms become worse and they become spiritually trapped. Trusting in God must be the foundation of every believer's healing journey. It means accepting that while magic exists, it is powerless compared to the will of the Almighty. If God protects someone, no one can harm them. If he allows a trial, it is only a test that comes with a reward and a purpose. Believing this brings peace to the heart and clarity to the mind. A strong trust in God reflects in one's attitude. They do not fear the creation and they do not panic in the face of spiritual challenges. Instead, they respond with patience, prayer, Quran recitation, and lawful supplications. Avoiding superstition also means taking active steps to strengthen spiritual discipline. This includes maintaining regular prayers, seeking forgiveness, reading the Quran, and making dua sincerely from the heart. When a person constantly remembers God, their heart becomes filled with light that drives away darkness. Even if someone tries to harm them with magic, their efforts are blocked by divine protection. Angels come to guard the one who places their trust in the Lord of all creation. Another important element is knowledge. Understanding what is allowed and what is forbidden protects a believer from falling into traps. When people learn authentic teachings about spiritual protection, they become confident and avoid falling victim to scammers or false healers. Knowledge brings empowerment. Instead of living with fear, the believer lives with certainty that God is enough for them. When fear disappears, magic and evil lose their influence. Healing from magic is not only a physical or emotional process. It is a journey of returning to God. Every moment of hardship becomes a reminder to call upon Him, to purify one's life, and to strengthen faith. Avoiding superstition is not just about rejecting false methods. It is about recognizing the truth that God alone controls every outcome. When a believer understands this deeply, they become spiritually unbreakable. In conclusion, protection from magic is rooted in trust and obedience to God alone. No charm, no object, no fortune teller, and no human being can bring protection like He can. When we avoid superstition, stay away from forbidden practices, and place our hearts fully in His hands, we gain a protection that cannot be challenged by any force. True security lies not in the objects we hold, but in the faith we hold within our hearts. The believer who depends on God is never defeated, and with Him, every darkness turns into light.